Okay, we're ready to go, Isabel.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Feliz Año Nuevo. Happy New Year to all of you as we kick off the first Communications Subcommittee of the year 2026. Oh my God. We're in 2026. So I hope you and any members of the public who have joined us are having or have had lovely and restful holiday, since we're going to have a lot of work this year. So we want to hear from, oh no, let's go to Scott. He's going to do our check-in.
Sure, you bet. I'll take the roll call for Kim Barrett,
Present.
George Blumenthal,
Here.
Maria Bonneville,
Present.
Marie Casillas,
Here.
Leandra Clark Harvey, Isabel Duron,
Here.
Elena Flowers,
Present.
Vito Imbasciani, here, Pat Levitt,
Present.
Linda Mulkus,
Here.
Chris Miaskowski,
Present.
Yael White.
Here.
Thank you. Back to you, Isabel.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. I'm going to hand it right over to Amy as she shares updates on the communications plan, and we'll see where we go from there. Amy.
Great, thank you, Isabel. Thank you, subcommittee members, CIRM team, and members of the public listening in. You can now watch me try to figure out how to share my screen. Okay, so I've done that, and I'm going to put it in presentation mode so you don't get a sneak preview. Continue to share. Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about a communications toolkit I've developed to help people talk about CIRM. For those of you who memorized in full the strategy that I presented at the last meeting, developing this toolkit and training people on how to use it were specifically called out as tactics for telling CIRM's story. As always, we start with CIRM's mission of transformative treatments and the scientists, students, and patients who are top of mind in all of our activities. And many of these people will feature heavily in today's talk. And a reminder to all of you about the Communications and Outreach Team mission, which defines our role in helping CIRM achieve its mission. Today, I'm going to start with a quick recap of meetings that have led up to the toolkit that I'll present today. Then I'll talk about new messaging, an elevator pitch and FAQ, and then next steps for rolling out this material. So let's start with a recap. At the June board meeting, which was my first presentation, I told you that I'd been hearing people express concerns that more people in California didn't know about CIRM. I told you I thought part of the issue was the words we use: agency, regenerative medicine, institute, stem cell, gene therapy. These words are complex and some sound downright bureaucratic and scientific. I told you that coming after an election cycle, okay, this was a few months ago, right? We're a little terrifying. We're terrifyingly ways out from that. But anyway, I told you at that time that coming after an election cycle in which people across the spectrum called health and medicine top priorities, there's no reason for CIRM's messaging not to resonate more broadly. At the same meeting, I told you that another problem is that people within CIRM have very different ways of describing the organization. Our message can't spread if it's made up of many different sub-messages. I told you that I wanted to help people in CIRM sing the same song. We might sing different versions of songs for different audiences, but the song should be identifiably the same and memorable, just like a song. At the September meeting of this subcommittee, I described a recent retreat with my team in which we thought about our core audiences and what we want them to do. Because it's not enough to know about CIRM if we don't know what we want people to do with that information. I told you that I wanted the people of California to support CIRM and understand the value of government funding of research. We want patients and patient advocates to participate in clinical trials and be advocates for CIRM. We want lawmakers to support CIRM and our policy proposals. And we want scientists to apply for funding and be advocates for CIRM. We're following a think, feel, do approach because people do things based on their emotions. So we thought about what emotions people need to feel in order to do these things, and then what people need to know in order to feel those emotions. In this slide, I'm trying to be true to the original. I told you that I thought people needed to feel hope, pride, confidence, trust, and excitement. Isabel added awe to that list, and it's been in every slide since this one. I told you that my team would be producing emotionally resonant content, putting that on channels intended to reach those target audiences in an effort to elicit these emotions and generate action. And then at the last subcommittee meeting, I presented our strategy, which is summarized here, and this is how you're going to see it going forward. And at the following full board meeting, JT presented a new version of the CIRM story, which is the first part of this strategy. You'll remember that the story is patient-focused, filled with hope, and is visually striking. It also, segue to today's presentation, it hit all 4 of CIRM's key messages, which I'm going to talk about next. So let's talk about our messaging. Before we dive into that, I want to talk about what is in this communications toolkit I'm talking about. There's a narrative and deck that you saw at the last meeting. Those materials will be available to everyone as part of this toolkit. In addition, there's the messaging that we'll talk about now. There's an elevator pitch and some FAQs that I'll talk about later in this meeting. The toolkit will also include a patient and student story compendium, which I'll touch on briefly today, as well as some proof points. So we're all using the same numbers and examples. Attached to the meeting agenda is a messaging document. I encourage you to read it through, and I'm happy to take questions on anything in that document. In light of my earlier comments about the words CIRM uses, I made a word cloud out of the words in the new messaging. What you'll see is that the updated language includes some new words, such as therapies, cures, access, medicine, research, and many others. The language is starting to sound more approachable and hopefully understandable. This messaging doesn't necessarily say anything new. We're the same organization with the same mission, but it helps us talk about the organization in a way that might help generate some of those emotions I was talking about earlier. I'm going to pause and give Vito a chance to drink water because he's trying to cough very quietly. I just want to give him a minute.
Thanks.
Are you good, Vito?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. I won't go through the messaging document in full, but please do read it. I'm happy to take questions on any parts of that document, even if I don't talk about them today. For now, I want to go through a few sections that I think are particularly important, especially these 4 key messages. I'm also going to talk about how we all use these key messages in talking about CIRM. The 4 key messages come down to the following. Our funding focuses on cures or therapies, since I know these words mean different things to different people. We work to make sure Californians from across the entire state can access our clinical trials and eventual therapies. We bring additional educational and economic benefits to the state, and we're advancing all this to benefit Californians. If you manage to work some combination of these words into your conversations, you are squarely on message. One advantage to these 4 key messages is that they happen to be true, which, I mean, let's be honest about some organizations and what they say about themselves. Everyone on this board serves on subcommittees and task forces focused on some aspect of these 4 key messages, and everyone in CIRM works towards these same things. The messaging document includes some talking points to help you address these key messages in conversations and presentations for our different audiences. The document also includes these phrases. The heart of our work are 4 simple truths. Behind every number is a name. Behind every disease, condition, or injury is a person. We have the power to create cures that change lives. All this because Californians chose to invest in world-class science. Obviously, these don't exactly roll off the tongue in conversation, but they're concepts that will certainly guide the work of me and my team, and they can also factor into how everyone talks about CIRM. Don't talk about our numbers without talking about the patients who need the outcome of our work. Don't talk about disease areas our work touches on without talking about the people living with those conditions. Always focus on how your work and CIRM's activities will deliver cures and benefit Californians across the state. Remind people that California is investing in this work at a time when others are backing away.
Amy,
Yes.
could you back up one? I want to ask it now because I'll forget it.
Yeah.
some extent later. On number 3,
Yeah.
and we have been constantly under criticism because supposedly we haven't really produced a cure that is accessible. And I'm wondering if this comes up in any, instance when we're talking to the public, how we can, turn that into a positive instead of, hearing the negative about, well, you guys have spent all this money and you haven't come up with any cure that I can afford or that so on, because they've heard it from someplace else, right?
Yeah.
We need some messages to turn that continual challenge into a positive, the awe of it all. But I really think we do need to have some real smart answers to that.
So Isabel, in the document that contains, I call it the elevator pitch and FAQ. One of the FAQs is essentially 20 years, no cures. Why? And I would encourage you to read that. And actually, I would love your feedback on it. Those FAQs that I wrote are starter answers. I don't provide, the full conversation, but I provide a full first couple sentences to help you start answering that. I would love it if you would read that and give me some feedback on whether you think it addresses your concerns or if I should keep working on it. I would love your feedback.
Well, I would ask everybody to give you a story or two or an idea or two that works with that, so that we have, we do have some real good answers that both touch the head and the heart.
Yeah.
Our research scientists have some great, touch the head stories.
Yeah.
But maybe we got to put the heart behind them too.
We do have some good patient stories, and I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is not in the FAQ answer, but I could put it in. We have great patient stories about certainly SCID babies, that they were cured. There are not everyone who participates in a clinical trial, sees positive outcomes, but there are some. So I think we also have some real examples that we can point to with fabulous photos and good anecdotes and quotes from some real patients. So that's another thing I can put into that document. We have some other questions that I want to take. I see, Chris, I think you put your hand up first.
Yeah, Amy, could you talk a little bit more about the first bullet? I don't understand the intent.
Oh, absolutely. We at CIRM, and certainly in portions of the messaging document, if you look through, we use a lot of numbers, how many people have participated in clinical trials and how many grants have we given out and how much money have we spent and, how many researchers have gotten grants. And, there's a number, lots of good numbers, and they're great and very useful in conversation. And this is a way of reminding us that it's not enough to say that 4,300 people have participated in clinical trials. We need to always try to remember to put some people behind that, because these are real people who took real risks and were really incredibly brave. And they deserve to be honored in the way we talk about this.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yael, your hand was up and now it's down. Did you have a question?
I was just going to say, I had read through all your FAQs and your suggestions, and I thought that you did a great job in putting it all out there. So that's complimenting you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I called on you.
So Amy, I wanted to follow Chris. Behind every number is a name. And one of the things that all of the beautiful work you've done, what I find, quite frankly, that's missing are the names, communities behind those numbers, where I can't point to specific impacts in the Latino community or in the Black community. Well, I know we've done at least some amazing work on sickle cell, but I need personalized stories that I can point to if I'm in that community. And I'm wondering, sorry, I didn't get through all of the facts. I did look at all of your media, but I feel we could talk about all the residents of California. We need to point at people and say, we see you, we know you, we hear you, and here is how this is helping you and why your dollar counts. So I'm wondering if we can't do a little more drill down on some of this to make sure that people have that kind of information. And I don't care if it's Chris talking, but if she might be in the middle of a large Latino community and wants to tell them why this is important to them, she's got some, some data back here that will help her tell that story better. So I'm just that's the feeling I get reading all of this. I'm missing that diversity.
Isabel, I think you're exactly right. At this point, we don't do that. That's something that I would hope to be able to do a better job of. Maybe after we do the work that Pat's really been encouraging, going out and doing some town halls and surveys. I personally don't have for some of them it's obvious. We know which communities benefit from some of these. But not all of them. And I personally don't have that knowledge. So it's something that I would like to gain. I think the board members can really help me with that. I think these surveys can really help me. Isabel, if I don't get to this, and I'll try to remember, there is a place in this presentation where I was thinking of you when I put this in there, where I think we can start building on that. We don't do it now, but I think we can get better at it. So if you don't feel like I've addressed this, call me out at the end, but I'm going to try to remember.
Okay,
so let me keep going and we'll see if we can get to that. Okay. The last page of that messaging document describes how we're putting our mission in motion, by which I mean the strategic allocation framework that guides our funding programs. The SAF, how we affectionately know the strategic allocation framework, is how we're going to make good on the promises and our key messages. It is deeply considered and thoughtfully outlined, which is to say that it is a lot to take in. And that's made it hard for us to talk about in ways that really explain its importance to the people of California. So this section of the messaging breaks the 6 primary goals of the SAF into a bite, snack, meal approach. So basically it comes down to this. If you don't have much time or aren't sure of a person's appetite to learn about the SAF, give them a bite. So here's a bite-sized version of goal 1. It's very high level. The first step towards a cure, finding the target. Or in more colloquial terms, you have to know what you're going after if you're going to find a cure or therapy. This is very high level. It's not a lot of detail. If a person seems interested, perhaps they want a snack, which you can also see here, which I'm not going to read, but you can look at. And if someone wants more detail, well, we have an entire meal and then some on our website and in other materials. This slide just shows the bite, snack, meal approach for goal 1, but you can see all of the goals in the document. The goal of this section is to help all of us talk about how we're going to enact our mission in language that's suitable for many different audiences and in sizes that are appropriate for many different conversation lengths. Okay, moving on. I said that the toolkit includes an elevator pitch and FAQ. That document is attached to the board agenda, but I'm just going to explain portions of it here. As with the messaging, the elevator pitch and FAQs are not intended to be prescriptive. They're intended to help guide you in starting conversations about CIRM. They'll get you through an elevator ride to maybe floor 4 and possibly through a few initial questions, then you're on your own. When I first told the board that I wanted to develop a consistent way of describing CIRM, I got extensive feedback from people on the board and on CIRM staff with ideas about what should be in that description. You will likely not be surprised to know that what was in these various descriptions people told me. They varied a lot by who suggested them. What's clear is that we all talk to different audiences and that I need not a single description, but a set of descriptions. And that's what I'm going to show you today and what the elevator pitch document lays out. Okay, so this is just a baseline description for an unknown audience. CIRM is a California agency that funds research intended to produce therapies or cures, whichever word you're comfortable with, for people with incurable diseases. And I've highlighted the words in the sentence that really touch on some of our key messages. This description would be suitable for a situation where you have no idea who this person is. And I'm going to show you, this is an actual script that I use when someone asks me where I work and who they are. CIRM is a California agency that funds research intended to produce therapies for people with incurable diseases, as above. You might remember that in 2004, there was a proposition to fund stem cell research in the state. That's how we were created. In 2020, another proposition extended our funding to include gene therapy and a focus on neurological diseases. We fund science from research breakthroughs through clinical trials. We train students to work in regenerative medicine and make sure Californians all over the state can access our clinical trials. Okay, I'm old. This is just what I say. I'm old. I talk mostly to old people, so I use the Prop 71 example because they remember it. I leave that out. So the other day I was talking to a kid's daughter who just graduated from college and she wanted to know where I worked. And I used this on her. But I didn't use Prop 71 because the kid's like 21. So, but I did talk about Prop 14. I thought maybe she would have heard of it. My point here, and then, okay. And here I highlight this little description I wrote that works for me, and I think it might work for other people. It happens to hit on all 4 of our key messages. So no matter what people come back to me with in terms of questions, there are going to be questions that allow me to stay on message and keep talking about things that are important to CIRM. Okay, so now I'm going to talk through a few variations on this. So let's say I'm talking to someone who I think might be a scientific audience, but I'm not really sure, so I'm going to go light. Maybe I'll add CIRM as a California agency that funds stem cell and gene therapy research intended to produce therapies. I don't use that in my general description because I'm not sure if people know those words, but I might use those words if I'm talking to someone with a biology background. Or here, try this one. This is if I'm at a scientific, say I'm a science officer and I'm at a scientific conference. They probably know cell and gene therapy, and I can probably say discovery research through clinical trials, which is an important part of what we do and could start an interesting conversation in that setting. I wanted to add something here. This isn't in my script, but I'm going to call out Maria. I don't know if Maria had read this presentation in advance or the messaging document, but the other day she was on a call with a reporter, and that reporter was interested in our CCCEs. So Maria was on the call to talk about access. And she delivered a version of this sentence that was something like, CIRM is a California agency that funds research intended to produce therapies and make those therapies accessible to people in California who can benefit from them. Right? That was a great way of using the sentence that was contextualized for the audience and invited questions that were on topic for what she was there to talk about. I was clapping quietly, Maria. Okay, so we've talked about some portions of the toolkit. We're going to talk about next steps. Okay, my team is in the process of compiling what I'm calling a patient and student story compendium. This will be a series of slides you can use to talk about patient stories, disease programs, or our students. The material will be in the toolkit to help you easily insert patient and student stories into presentations. Okay, Isabel, I'm remembering, this is where I wanted to come back to you. So in this compendium, what I would like to have and what I think would be helpful to people is, as part of the information, here's the disease, links to trial information, links to pretty pictures, information about the patients shown, but also some information about prevalence of this disease in California, in particular target populations for whom this disease might be relevant. So if you're talking to this population, you might want to insert, this slide. It's not exactly what you're asking for, but I think it's a step, and it's something I'm hoping we can build out.
Yeah, just don't use the word target.
Don't use the word target in terms of like target population. Okay, good.
And particularly in this political atmosphere we're living in now. Got to be very sensitive with that word. You're the targeted population for this disease. What does that mean?
Oh, Isabel, that is really helpful. Thank you for that. I wouldn't have thought of that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Aren't these horrible times we're living in? Okay, yeah, Ellie, you've got your hand up.
Just another small detail to think about. I love that, Isabel, the word target, but also the picture. If we're going to be going to a Latino population, the picture of this lovely family maybe could not be white.
Yeah. So we do in some cases for diseases that are for some populations, we've got the ethnicities that would be appropriate for those audiences. We don't in every case,
Sure. But
but we have
when
some.
it's obvious, when it's available, I think having an appropriate picture that looks like you and having like a stock index card of, 10 tips, however much time you have for this specific population. I think if we're doing the research anyway and preparing for a presentation, then maybe we can also have that as this impacts this community in this way,
Right. And there again, to that point, Amy, when you're saying, oh, this is a disease that is in your community, that could be taken as very negative, Oh, what do we do? Or, why us? Or what does that mean? Are we going to get targeted? So once again, language, depending on who you're talking to and what you're saying and how you're trying to get them to hear that message is really critical. And there's where I think some of that lived experience of the presenter, but second of all, the awareness of that community and how you would be speaking to them, and being very sensitive to how they might hear what you're about to say. And then being able to come back with and say, there's a great concern about this particular disease that we're finding more of in this community. And we think, we need you to engage with us so that we can find those cures, so that we can find out more about it, so we can bring you the necessary, targeted, necessary gene therapy or the necessary. I quite frankly do not like to say the word cures to communities who find it hard just to get in the door of a clinic. The cure, even when I talk about cancer, diminish risk, try to find out what the problem is and work towards, removing it or curing it. But to sort of say, we're going to cure this, that's a big promise that don't know that we can. Look how long it's taken, right, to find cures that we've been paying for how many years now. So honestly, to me, the words are also very critical depending on which community you're talking to.
So Isabel, you're bringing up a great point, and actually you're teeing up maybe I'll put Marguerite on the spot now. So I've been having some conversations with several people, both on the board and within CIRM, about the word cure, but other words. I think people are taking words very seriously and coming to me and talking to me about words, which I love to talk to people about words. One thing that would be unbelievably helpful to me, and I'm speaking to the board now, but I'm also speaking to anyone at CIRM listening in, because I know there are many people. Within the messaging document, I have ways of talking about each key message for the different audiences. And Isabel, let's be honest, like the audiences I talk about are incredibly broad right now. Over time we want to narrow that, obviously.
Right.
And I've already talked to some of the science folks, and they've helped me refine some of the language we use. There's a column, I think page 2 or 3 of that document, we have the 4 key messages and then columns for each key audience. And they've really helped me think about all of the words within the science column. And I would love help thinking about the words within, certainly for this group, I think there's people who can help me with the patient advocacy column. And this is going to be generic. It's not audience specific, but I do think we want to help people have words that are really carefully thought through.
Yeah.
Marguerite, I know you and I have had some conversations. Did you want to jump in here, or do you want to wait to the end?
Yeah, I'm fine to jump in. Yeah, this is a great conversation, I think. What I reached out to Amy with yesterday was around that word cures. From a disability studies perspective, it can be a bit controversial, which may seem strange, but there are plenty of people with disabilities who aren't looking for a cure and who think that the focus on a cure kind of you know, sets them up as in opposition to people who are normal, and so it devalues them. That's not by any means in the entire disability community. Certainly, people who have chronic illnesses or progressive conditions, you know, that might be facing death. You know, they certainly, you know, are not against a cure, but I just pointed it out that, you know, for some folks it rings a little wrong, and they feel like money should be spent on, you know, changing society to support people with disabilities better. And then I also went back and I looked a little bit more closely, or just refreshed on the MS Society. I can't remember what they call it. It's not the mission, but it's the framework for how they're driving forward on research. And actually, they've actually brought everyone together around the world. So like all the societies all over the world have come together on this. And they do use the word cure, but they also are focused on restoring, because, you know, even if you cure people who don't have it yet, you know, what about the people who do have it and who have lost, you know, functionality? That cure is not necessarily going to help them. So it's stopping MS, it's restoring function, and then ending MS, like stopping it from happening in the first place. So it's just complicated, is what I would say, and I would personally be more comfortable with the therapies language, and I feel like, you know, the piece here too that I think is always so interesting. It's just I feel like we are doing such we are what we're doing, what our researchers and, you know, educators and other folks, administrators are doing is so innovative in terms of and I think that speaks to that piece somewhere in one of these slides, you know, about really positioning California at the forefront of science, research, education, support, accessibility, all of that. So,
Oh, Kim's got her hand up.
Kim, go.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amy. I'm really excited by this. I also wanted to weigh in on the cures thing. I am mindful of everything that's been said, and I'm particularly persuaded by Margaret's comments about, you know, how that lands with the disability community. But and scientists are always a little hesitant to use the word cure. But I do think that that is one of our unique selling points, that there are conditions where we have the hope of a lasting cure. And we don't want to give up on that completely, because otherwise, you know, we're not just talking about controlling symptoms, we're talking about changing the natural history of a disease state. And we need to hold on to that, at least in some way, and use it judiciously.
Yeah. And Kim, I will add that I absolutely agree with that, but it is being sensitive to the specific audience where hearing that can cause, you know, and therefore, and that's why, as much as we have a toolkit, as much as we have some basic language and, you know, here's an idea for you, that when you walk into a room, you have to see that and make some decisions too about who you're talking to. All the toolkits in the world might not save you. And I think that that's why it becomes important for us to have this conversation and be sensitive to these various audiences, so that when we walk in a room and suddenly we are faced with a number of those disabled in the room, to be very sensitive to that whole issue. So I absolutely agree. I mean, we're trying to also sell hope. That's what cures means, right? That's that hope and that awe. So I don't say we don't. I just say we need to be really empathetic and sensitive, depending on the audience who's in the room.
I have, I think, 2 slides left. Could I do those? And then let's take the slides down so we can all see each other, because I think this is a really rich conversation, and it would be nicer if we could have it while we could see each other. instead of one at a time. So I will very quickly go through the next couple and then let's continue this conversation. Okay, so I said we would have proof points for you to use. These are the numbers, lots of numbers. So depending on who you're talking to, what you might want to say about CIRM, I want to make sure we all have access to consistent, accurate numbers so we can all be talking about the organization in the same way. So this is a slide that will be kind of in this master deck and will be updated yearly. And then finally, the rollout. So all of these materials are going to be available to anyone and everyone who wants to talk about CIRM. I'm going to start holding trainings for the team and board members if you want to attend. And then I will be taking feedback throughout the year. I'll probably update this yearly or so based on that feedback. And then the FAQs, for those of you who have looked at the FAQ document, it's pretty light. It was sort of the top questions I get asked. But we can add to that over time. The problem with an FAQ document is either you make it all inclusive and no one can use it, or it's too light and it's not helpful. So I'm trying to walk a balance here, but I take feedback. And with that, thank you. My prepared remarks, I wasn't anticipating that we would already have such a robust conversation going. I'm interested in addition to the conversation we're having, I'm interested in feedback from board members on how you currently get information about opportunities to talk about CIRM and how you would like to get information about how to talk about CIRM. What I was saying is I would like feedback from the board on how we can how can we do a better job of helping you get out there to talk about CIRM, in addition to this other conversation we're having, which I think is incredibly robust.
I think, Amy, a point that I feel is always missing. You know, we talk about the science, we talk about the students, we talk about the patients, we talk about, in some ways, patients and families impacted. We don't talk about the community. In other words, we're not saying to the community that we recognize your value to us because you're the ones that are paying for this. We talk about, like you were talking about, proposition, was it 71? Back when? I would have told that student, hey, California taxpayers are paying for this. I wouldn't need to talk about a proposition or anything else, or even the legislature. But Californians are paying for this, you know, and all of you have an investment in the work that we're doing. It's reminding the communities that they have a value, that they are valuable to us because they are helping us make this hope become a cure. I want a broader community to embrace the idea of what this work is about and why it has to happen and why they have to care about it. So I miss that point throughout. And I think we need to bring it closer to home or pound that way. I'm always saying this is paid for by California taxpayers. So,
I think that's a great point. I'll find some places to weave that in. Jill?
This may be beyond our scope, but I'm wondering if when we're explaining what CIRM does, what we stand for, and being careful and sensitive about our language and our imaging. I'm wondering if there is also a place to include like why it's safe for you to be interested or why it's safe for you to participate in a clinical trial or in potential research that we're going to be funding, because there is a lot of fear and misinformation, especially in communities of disparity. So again, it might be too much for CIRM to take on and out of our wheelhouse, but just throwing that out there as something that we should to consider.
Yeah, it's, there was a point in time where we had material on the CIRM webpage about stages of clinical trials and regulations and all that stuff. And that was way, way, way back in the day. That's come down in part because of the effort of maintenance of, accuracy of that content. But I think we have had conversations internally about, what do we need to be telling people? What's not our responsibility? Because I think you're right that people really don't know the stages of clinical trials. They don't know what the regulations are. We're also in an era, we had a conversation not long ago. We are in a bit of an era where how do we talk about what's safe and what isn't safe? Is the FDA stamp of approval always an indication that you should feel comfortable in a clinical trial? I don't know. And that's not for me to decide. That is not my job, but I think it's something that's important to think about and talk about.
Yeah, and it will be reviewed when you enter that, but I think just if we have an opportunity to speak in front of people and explain what we do, I think it's also helpful to say there's protocols in place and this is a safe thing for you to explore.
Yeah. Pat?
Yeah, thanks. So the packages are great. I mean, I think they're going to be really helpful, and you identified some really key areas that will, I think, improve communication a lot. As people were talking, I was thinking about how I talk about what I do, and if you think about, the disease and disorder list that we see as board members, few, if any, of them fall under the cure domain of definition. I don't, and in my conversations with communities and families for a long time, since I'm old, it is about, is there a treatment or intervention that's going to improve the life of the quality of life of the patient and their families. And we're not curing blindness for most of what we're funding. We're providing sight at some level that you wouldn't define as a cure. You would define it as a substantial improvement that and that resonates. So that's one thing I wanted to say is that there's like this littered history in science of leaders of scientific societies and others and leaders of universities going in front of Congress and talking about, give us more money and we'll cure this in 10 years. I can cite multiple examples of that. And so I think it is skating on ice, but it's skating on thin ice, I think. And it doesn't apply to many of the diseases and disorders that for which we fund research. So improving the lives and well-being of individuals who are diagnosed with a disease or disorder is looked at as a real great promise, and people get very enthusiastic about that because they're caring for individuals who are struggling, and that's what they want to hear about. The second thing about communities I just wanted to mention is that it could be a real benefit to engage with communities in a way in which communities, particularly those who are leaders in communities, recognize what CIRM is doing, why it's so valuable to their specific community, and those individuals have far greater reach than we will ever have within communities. So whatever we can do to be in front of audiences in which we have leaders of communities present to talk about CIRM and to determine how it does or does not resonate with those individuals, because no amount of communication processes we're going to have are going to reach communities broadly. But for example, Isabel is a leader within a Latino community, and your voice people pay attention to in terms of why this is so important. And there are other examples of that. So I think attention to communities gives us a multiplying factor in terms of touching more families and more individuals within those communities. That's it.
It's a great point. George, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I really love what you've put out. I feel like this is a package that we really can work with and can use to our advantages. So thank you so much for doing this, and I look forward to seeing further iterations. A couple of points about the sort of the country context of this communications. One is, I think it may be really important these days to distinguish what CIRM is doing from what NIH is doing, because I think we live in a world where trust in NIH is eroding, whereas whereas we can say that we're motivated entirely by science and what we're doing. So I think it's important at some point to be able to make that distinction. Another contextual thing that I think is important is the issue of affordability. We've been doing a lot on affordability, on making these these treatments available to a broad swath of our population. And I think it's important to emphasize our sensitivity to the issues of affordability.
Great, thank you. And speaking of affordability, we have Maria up next.
Was not what I was going to talk about, but I'm happy to touch on that. But what I was going to mention is something to amplify what Pat was saying. When we started on the outreach for the community care centers and we went to the different parts in California that we visited, what we heard over and over again was that you needed the trusted leaders in the community to come in and be the messengers for the communities, for what we were doing there, for regenerative medicine as a whole. Just everything. And we especially heard that we heard it everywhere, but when we were in Fresno, it really, there were members of the community that came in and said, like, I'm the trusted messenger in my community, and I know who to go to. I know who to talk to about what and how important it is to them. And I think that's part of the work that you see in the community care centers by including CBOs as part of that entire program. And then moving forward, the CBO expansion program, which will come to the board later this year, around and doing the due diligence that we needed to do. What are the pockets that we're missing in California, and how can we bring CBOs from those areas to the table? So that's definitely we know it, we hear it, and I know we're working on that. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you nailed it, Maria, in a response to some of these other comments, that it's absolutely true that we need the multiplier effect of reaching these community leaders is enormous. And I think the CBOs associated with the CCCEs is a fantastic opportunity to reach those people. We're not doing much of that yet, but I think we should, and I look forward to reporting back on that.
Can I pick that up, Amy? Because
Yeah.
I got an invite from Adita to go talk to the Oakland Rotary. And I said, and so I'm looking at a picture of the Oakland Rotary because I wanted to know, who are they, and how to prepare how I would address them. And I was seeing it's a very diverse and very large Rotary. And so to Maria's point, within that Rotary are people who represent communities and who represent CBOs, who do work in their community, and going through them and messaging to them in that kind of a speech. We want to get the word out. You know how to help us get it out. Can I get some of you people to come and talk to me afterwards and give me your contact information so that I can share with our comms team and we can come back to you specifically and you can help us connect with your community. That helps, as we said, and that magnification process, we get it done in one room, but we're already, enlarging our audience and hopefully our diverse audiences when we do take advantage of something. I would love it if we had, looks like 500 people in the Oakland Rotary. I'd love it if there was 500 people in the room. We could really expand our message. But that's an idea about how you do it. You take advantage of who's in the room, and then you challenge them to come and help you do the work and how to get the message out, instead of me having to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 CBOs independently, but really know where to take turn my attention.
I'm thrilled that you're doing that presentation. Isabel mentioning Aditi reminds me, I was going to start this presentation by introducing my team, and instead I started by anxiously jumping into my presentation. So if we could take a minute, I want to say that Aditi Desai is can you wave? Okay, and then Katie Sharifi, can you give a little wave?
Katie, hi Katie.
And then Christina Smith. In the last couple of meetings, you've heard me droning on because I've been trying to launch a lot of things. I'm hoping in the future meetings, you'll be hearing more from people on the team about the work we're doing and the impact we're having.
Any other questions? Any ideas? Sounds like we had a muscular conversation. Oh, I haven't heard from Leandra. Is she there? Or did she leave us? Oh, there you are. Come on,
Here.
Leandra. Love to hear your voice.
I think you just heard it. I said I'm here. No, it's been a good conversation. I do really appreciate the different ways of looking at, from small to large audiences and snapshots and bites and meals and all of those different illustrations. I think they're very helpful and I think it's good work. So
Thank you.
the only other thing that I would add is, as we think about communities working together is really utilizing cultural informants. I think that's what folks were kind of talking about. And that's the terminology that I would use is really those stakeholders who have been identified as leaders, trusted leaders in the community. So.
Leandra, can you repeat that? You said there was a phrase that you would use and I didn't catch it. Can you say it again?
Cultural informants.
Cultural informants. Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Oh.
These days, informants is also, I mean, it can drive you crazy, but once again, who am I talking to? Who is my audience? And how will they take what I'm saying? I don't know if I'd ever told you that when I was in Vegas for a journalism meeting, I actually was talking to a young woman who worked in Vegas. And this was maybe the year after the COVID. She was I want to say Ecuadorian. Anyway, I said to her, so did you get vaccinated? And she said, yes, because I had to in order to work. So what I heard was a resistance to the whole vaccination, but she did it in order to survive. That is work. And I said to her, well, why are you skeptical? And she says, well, we think it's the government that wants us not to have children. So you can generalize all you want, but you have to know and have a sense of the people that you're going to talk to and how their lived experience might be different enough that you even have to pay attention to the words you use. So, when I talk to doctors, I don't necessarily like to use the term cultural competence because I think they're going to push back and say, what, I'm not competent? They miss the cultural, they're into the competent. And so I think it's just me being very sensitive these days in utilizing the language because it is in and of itself, one word can be very powerful and turn people off. And and we're trying to be transparent, which is very critical in this day and age for people to accept that message. But if something turns them off, they don't hear the message. So that's why I'm so, Amy, so focused in on words I hear right now.
I appreciate that. To contextualize my phrasing, it's something that's often used in social science research. Appreciate that it might not come across as intended, but also your term cultural competency is a bit, that's also, there's a big argument about that, right? Cultural sensitivity is what we're using now. So I think what we're illustrating even in this conversation is that words are changing, our lexicon is changing all the time. And it's great to have these conversations because we're informing one another and helping each other come up with what's best for CIRM to use as they go out to the community. So thanks, Isabel, for starting the discussion.
Oh, thank you, everybody, for engaging. It was lovely. Amy, throwing it back to you if you want to wrap up or in terms of your presentation, are you done?
I'm going to wrap up by saying thank you to everyone. This is a much richer conversation than these are always good meetings, but this is richer than I had even imagined. So thank you everyone for nerding out on words with me.
Okay, we haven't heard a peep from JT.
So I just wanted to say to Amy that again, these past few discussions have been indicative of the new strategic direction that we had hoped to be employing when she came aboard. And I think the proof is in the robustness of the dialogue and the participation of all members of the subcommittee who are on the calls, which is fantastic. And I think that together as a team, with Amy's guidance and coordination with the members of the subcommittee and the board, that we are going to make great strides in getting communication out to all stakeholders that we need to. And so I just want to shout out to Amy and the team for doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, huge thank you to the team. You guys hear from me all the time, but I'm just sitting here making noises about the work my team has done. So thank you to the team for all their hard work.
Absolutely. Thank you to the team. And thank you, Amy, for that. We've watched this media presentation grow in these last 9 months, I think, since we got moving. And so we really appreciate, or whenever it was you came to us, you might be able to tell us the time. But thank you very much. We appreciate all the work you put into this. Now what we want are metrics.
Yeah, I know. All right, stay tuned.
Okay. Okay, shall we call it a day, or, oh wait, do we ask for, is there anybody out in public who wants to join us? We've already had our share of the public. Nope.
So no.
No Claudette? None? Okay.
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, then let's end the meeting. Thank you very much and hope to see you. Oh, I guess the next time we'll be at our board meeting. Is that it?
On the 29th.
Thank you. Everybody have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.